Hello, welcome back to the Yoga Well podcast. I'm Chase Bossart, Executive Director of the Yoga Well Institute. Today I have my wife, Elizabeth Cunningham Bossart, who is a master's in education as well as a master's in Ayurveda, and who has done a lot of Sanskrit studies and general studies in Ayurveda to talk about Ayurveda and yoga. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So you and I have the great pleasure of teaching together, and also of we do have some clients that we share, and there's been so much synergy between yoga and Ayurveda, and I'm really interested to hear your take on how that comes about and whatnot. But before we get there, tell us a little bit, how did you get interested in Ayurveda, and how did you even know what Ayurveda is, and what's the beginning of your becoming a healer journey?
Thank you. Thank you for asking. So I spent my junior year of college of undergraduate in South America and Ecuador, and I traveled throughout South America. And after that year abroad, I had a lot of unexplained health issues. I had some rashes, some digestive issues. I went to some fatigue. I went to a lot of different doctors. Nobody could really tell me what was going on. I had stool tests done. And in that journey, I was introduced to a lot of alternative modalities. When Western medicine didn't have an answer for me, I looked to some alternative medicines. So I started reading about Chinese medicine, naturopathic medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. Who I went to see to get better was an actual. He still practices all these years later. He's a chiropractor who does muscle testing. But what my introduction was reading a lot of books. And there was talk of Ayurveda, there was talk of Chinese medicine, properties of food as medicine. And through that journey, I recovered my health, went back to school, and always thought, someday I'm going to do this. I think that this is part of my calling. This is what I'm here to do. Finished my undergrad degree and started out working, and I started teaching because I also really enjoyed teaching. And then I was in a 10-year career of teaching in elementary, and then mostly with adults, English as a second language. But always in the back of my head, I thought, wait, you were going to go to acupuncture school. You were going to go to naturopathic school. I didn't actually even know if there were Ayurveda schools at that time. And then fast forward, I met you in 2007, and we went on a trip to India. We went to Chennai.
Yeah, we went to go meet Mr. Deshagachar in 2000.
We went to meet your amazing teacher, sir. And in that journey, I had a good friend back in Santa Cruz who was an Ayurvedic practitioner. And it had, passed my mind like, oh, maybe this is something I'd want to study. But it was really on that trip to meet Sir that I actually had a dream about Ayurvedic medicine. And I found myself in the bookstores in Chennai, just pulling all the books down about Ayurvedic medicine. And on that trip, you actually connected me with an Ayurvedic doctor.
No, I think what happened is that Mr. Deshagachar was very kind to you, and he actually spent quite a bit of time with you as a getting to know. And I think you told him, I had a dream about Ayurveda and I would be interested in taking some classes. And he knew a Ayurvedic Vaidya that was pretty close to where we were staying. And he asked him if you could come in and meet him. And then that resulted, if my memory is correct, in your having daily classes with that, I think he was almost 90-year-old Vaidya. And you studied the Ashtanga Hridayam.
Yes, that's correct. I do think that you also knew of him. I think it must have come from Sir as well. I think Sir mentioned it, but I think you also mentioned it. So from two different sources was the same Ayurvedic doctor mentioned, and I did take classes. And as soon as I started taking classes with this Vaidya, which is an Ayurvedic doctor in India, I knew I needed to do the studies in the US. And then I researched programs, and outside of the town where I had lived for many years and gone to undergraduate, there was a program at Mount Madonna Institute in Watsonville outside of Santa Cruz. And there began the journey of studying Ayurvedic medicine, and shortly after my first year, starting to practice, and then just building over time. And now it's all I do.
Well, it
It's
was more than just building over time. I mean, you did their whole program, and then you became an assistant and a teacher in the program. Well, there was quite an evolution from your going to that program to also uh,
yes.
being an
So
assistant. And
yeah, so I started that program in 2009, and it was a 3.5 year master's program, and it was wonderful program. I learned so much. They have a variety of different teachers that come and teach there. And in that session, during that time, I started to see my own clients while I was also teaching part time, sort of leaving the education field, moving into the Ayurveda field. And, what's amazing is having all those different teachers takes you to all these different, it's a different perspective with each Ayurvedic doctor that's coming. So Dr. Singh is from Varanasi University in India. Dr. Ladd has had his institute in New Mexico. Now he has it in Asheville, North Carolina. So Dr. Shrestha is from Nepal. Dr. Yesh is in South Bay. So all of these teachers coming together give you the amazingness and enormity of Ayurveda from their lens. But then you get to decide who you want to, study more with, or who do you want to learn with, or who do you want to intern with. Dr. Ladd had a pulse course in New Mexico, and you and I both actually went, and we took his pulse course and met some actually amazing friends there that we're still friends with today. And he has a very specific, the pulse, from my understanding, and maybe you could speak to this too, is not in the Ayurvedic text, but a lot of Vaidyas or Ayurvedic doctors have learned from their teachers how to do pulse. So Dr. Ladd has a way of reading pulse that's very expansive and has a lot of different layers in the pulse. So took a course there. And then actually spent the most of my internship with Dr. Sarita Shrestha, who she's an MD of Ayurveda and an OBGYN. So did a lot around women's health, and basically learned how to practice Ayurveda from her. And that was really a gift, to be able to study with her. Just so much knowledge. She does a lot of tongue diagnosis, pulse diagnosis. She has an amazing way with her clients. So each teacher there really gave me a lot of information, and it gives you a lot of awareness to study Ayurveda, because you're not only learning a traditional science from India, you're also learning about yourself, about your own doshas, your own tendencies to go out of balance, your own digestive tendencies, your own, proclivity of your mind. Like, where do you tend to go? Is your mind busy? Is your mind, more heavy? Are you just in utter peace all the time? What is the state of the mind? And even when you might perceive yourself as having a lot of balance, when you're studying about this science, you realize, oh, my mind is not that quiet. It's quite busy. I have a lot going on. Okay, what are the tools that I can bring in through an Ayurvedic lens that are going to help me calm my mind, ignite my digestive fire, balance my system? So you're learning about it for helping others, but you really are learning about it for yourself. How do I bring balance to myself? How do I bring my state into balance on a daily basis?
having watched this whole process with you, I think for me, one of the most powerful things you did was Mount Madonna had these offerings for the community where they would make the
Hmm.
teachers available for one-on-one Ayurveda consultations with the community, and it went on for like days and days.
Yeah. So this is my internship I'm talking about that you're also mentioning, where the Ayurvedic doctors, when they would come in the more advanced courses, we would sit with clients who had agreed to have a student body in their sessions. So it was the Ayurvedic doctor, the client or patient, and then students. And that was so powerful because, first of all, you see there's so much that's not spoken through the practice of Ayurveda. Like an Ayurvedic doctor is assessing through what he sees, what he smells, what he feels, all he or she is really looking through the senses to assess what's happening and the person is sitting in front of them. But also just being able to sit in that room, you start to pick up those cues yourself as a practitioner. Ask this question, ask that question, be respectful in these ways, the different ways to conduct an intake, the ways to present yourself as a practitioner. What are the signs and symptoms you're looking for? What are you assessing for? It was just life-changing to be able to sit in those sessions. I still refer back to a lot of those sessions. That was now 2010 and 11, and I still think back to a lot of those sessions and things that were said, questions that were asked, indicators, different positive factors to a disease process. So it still influences the way I think about things, and I still refer back to a lot of those cases in my mind as well.
My memory of it
Kind of
is
gets me excited as well.
totally,
Yeah,
yeah, I see it.
thinking about it.
My memory is that it went on for years and that it was outside of the weekends. So, like, Dr. Shrestha would be in the Bay Area for like
Well,
4 months, and she would be
that was
seeing
me.
people. Oh, okay.
That was me deciding that the more I received of training, the better practitioner I would be. So there was a set amount of hours through Mount Madonna, and then I decided that I needed more. More is better in this scenario to receive more training, more information, more student observation. So yes, whenever she would come, I would go and sit with her for longer periods of time, even when my hours had been met, because I just knew that you can learn the science and you can read the book, someone can teach it to you, but it's one thing to have theory, but when you put it into practice, it's a different level of integration. So I knew I needed that practice to really understand what was happening, how is it happening, what are the recommendations, why is she making these recommendations. It was pretty life-changing, actually, to be able to do that. I don't know that I would have been able to practice in the way that I was when I got out without
Yeah.
those sessions.
Yeah, I mean, even I was able to go because she opened it to students, and anybody who was an Ayurvedic student could go and watch her see these people, and then the person would leave, and there would be a discussion, and
Yes.
it would be like, so here's the causes, and here's the symptoms, and here's how I'm going to deal with it. It was just, I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah,
Mm.
really. I mean, and in the discussions, why did you give this herbal formula? What's your thinking behind it? The properties of the herb, the properties of, the different herbs within the formula. What are you treating? And it's a complex science. I remember thinking, Dr. Shresha would come and visit and she would walk outside and literally feel the temperature of the day and decide what she was going to eat. And that level of acknowledgement of my environment is infecting my system, my microcosm is meeting my macrocosm, the inside of me is linking with the state of what's the weather environment, and then making decisions on what I'm doing and what I'm eating and how I'm dressing based on what the day presents. It's kind of like mind altering because that's not how I was raised. That's not the way I had historically been taught to think. So to have someone, look at what is happening in the weather, what's happening outside, what am I going to eat based on what's happening, and then to see that in with the clients was so profound because the clients would come in and she's assessing what season are they in right now, like literal season, like this change of season, like what season are we in? What season of life? What stage of life are they in? Their age, what their eating patterns are. So she's assessing all of these things at one time. And I thought to myself, there's no way I'm going to be taking all this science, digesting it in that moment with the client and be able to say okay, this is what you're going to do. And you start to see someone do that over and over again. And then you start to do it like, oh, this is the season we're in. This is where they live. This is the state of their, the current state they're in. This is, the phase of life they're in. All the words in Sanskrit are coming. So, the kala, the different times of life, the different times of day, the different seasons are all playing into what's happening in their system right now. And you think, there's no way I'm going to do that during the session. And then by the end of it, sitting for months at a time, you start to do that with your own clients because you see it done time and time again. And then there's so much information you're taking in through the intonation of the voice. Is the person sitting like this? Are they sitting like this? Are they animated? Are they tired? Are they angry? What's the color, the tone of the skin? What's the texture of the skin? So all these things are playing in. And over time, it just starts becoming evident. Dr. Ladd has this amazing story of getting on an airplane and just knowing what was going on health-wise with everyone around him. But he tells a story of a specific kind of health imbalance that is very rare, that someone sat down next to him and he was like, oh, do you have blah, blah, blah? And the person's like, how did you know? Because you just start to see these patterns over and over in people. You see what's happening in their system just by looking at them, not anything from what they've shared or said. I mean, it gets me so excited because it's really amazing.
It is a very complete science of experience and how your experiences influence the way that your system functions. It's amazing. So after you completed the master's degree, you then started teaching for Mount Madonna. Tell me about that.
Thank you for asking about that. It gets me kind of excited. So I missed teaching. I was a teacher for 10 years and I thought, I love practicing. I love seeing clients, but I miss teaching this. I miss teaching because I do feel like I have a way that I can be a bridge. I'm a translator. I mean, literally I've translated from Spanish, English to Spanish, but I felt that way with Ayurveda. Like this is not the way I was raised. A lot of people weren't raised thinking through this lens. And a lot of times you bring Ayurveda out and people think it's a lot of rules and regulations and do this and don't do that. And I'm over here going, no, 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 no. This is like this amazing wealth of knowledge in a toolbox. And let me open the toolbox and start helping you like translate it for it to fit into your current life. So when the opportunity arose for me to be an assistant teacher at Mount Madonna, where I would go down for the week and there'd be the master teacher, all these teachers that I've mentioned, and then there would be me. And I was the assistant teacher, so I would oversee, what was happening in the class. I would create the, exams, homework assignments, things of that nature. But it was also a really wonderful way to hear the material a second time because, I was just talking about this earlier where each time it's such a deep science. It's such a rich science. There's so much information and it's such a different perspective that each time you hear it, something new comes. So to be able to sit in those classes, which Chase you were auditing at that time and you came and you sat with me. And you were excited. I remember you being as excited as I was in the classroom because I'm hearing it for a second time. You're hearing it from these teachers from a first time. You've heard it from other teachers before. And it just washes over you and you get different pieces and you're like, oh my God, I learned something totally new because I've heard it again. And also just exciting to try to help others digest this, extremely vast science and have it digest through their own lens. So that was really fun experience. I think I did that 2 or 3 years where I was the assistant teacher at Mount Madonna. And, got to see some new teachers, master teachers come on board, got to see some of my teachers come on board and really help them digest and help me digest things on a deeper levels, because I may have gotten this much, 80%, and then there was a 20% that wasn't quite digesting, and then hearing it again, I was able to digest it. So it's pretty profound.
I think that this is something we really emphasize at the Yoga Well as well. We want people to stay in contact with the material.
Right.
Just like you're saying with Ayurveda, yoga is a different lens. It's a different way of understanding your relationship with the world and how that functions. And that takes some time to not only come to understand, but to assimilate. And it's you just hear it the first time and it's like, okay, well, that's interesting and that's nice. But the second time around, then the question can become like, well, is this how I'm operating? Is this how I'm thinking? Is this, and then the third time around is enough familiarity that you can actually form a question. In our training programs, we have at the Yoga Well Institute, we have separate programs for people to come back and take the training a second time, even a third time, as assistantship and as faculty in training, because it takes some time. You hear the information, and then the second time around, you just hear it in such a different way. And,
Yeah. And also, you become a different person through receiving the information. So the second time it comes, something may not have been able to even enter or kind of like infiltrate. And then the second time you hear it, it's like, oh, yeah, this first level is already integrated. Now I'm ready to accept the next level, kind
yeah,
of open to the next level.
yeah. And then, you did one more training, which was really
So,
textually focused and
yes.
4 years long. And
Yeah. So then then I started to practice. I started to practice actually after the second year. I was teaching part time, and then I gradually, I think after the school year, I just went full time into Ayurveda, and I got hired to do Ayurvedic massage at a yoga studio in Berkeley.
yeah,
And then I got hired at a studio in San Francisco to do Ayurveda, initially for someone else, and then eventually for myself. And I was happy. I was happy going along, doing my practice until my husband, who I'm talking to right now, was introduced to one of my teachers. Dr. Yesh Manur was doing an advanced training through Shubham Ayurveda, and you actually wanted to study it. And it was all textual based. It's all from the Ashtanga Hridayam, and you were really excited, and you said, I want to do this. And I thought to myself, he can't do this. This is my science. And I went, wait a second. This is Ayurveda. It's everybody's science. And you started the first weekend, and I said, I'm going to do it too. So we started that first weekend, and after the first weekend, I thought, I can't do another. I've already finished a master's in education many years ago. Then I did a master's in Ayurveda. I can't do another, like a doctorate level Ayurveda program. It's too much.
this
I'm
this
done.
program was phenomenal. I mean,
It was
I
phenomenal.
I'm a
And yet,
yeah,
my bandwidth for it was, I was no way.
yeah.
I'm done. And then I went for the weekend, and I thought, oh, it's too much, but it's so
I can't
good.
not do it.
And then the next weekend came, and I told myself, I'm not going. And then I said, honey, I'm going. And we both went, we showed up. And then it basically was life altering in another level. It was just the way that she put together the program. And the teachers are from India, and they're in India. So we had some came in person, and then the many virtually. And it was just texturally based. And it was just life changing and amazing.
To me, that was the main thing about the program that Shubham Ayurveda that Vaidya Yesh put together at Shubham Ayurveda, is that it was basically passage after passage of Sanskrit text and organized, just brilliantly organized. And so it went through and explained what the text is saying in really practical language.
Yeah.
And what was the relevance for me as a yoga teacher is that Krishnamacharya and was an Ayurvedic doctor, and Mr. Deshagachar was also had a lot of training in Ayurveda. And I came to realize through this study with your teachers that Vini Yoga already has Ayurveda baked into it, but
Mm,
it's just not explicitly stated.
yes.
Like so many concepts that came through the text in Ayurveda, it was like, oh, so that's why. Oh, so that's why. Oh,
Yeah,
so that's why. I mean, it happened again and again and
I
again
know.
and again. It
I
was
mean, it
just
was
stunning.
amazing for me to be in the room from my lens of like what I had received before and the deepening of my Ayurveda, but to have you in the room with me, having the light bulbs go off for you and the amazing way that you were digesting it was also quite profound because you were seeing how Ayurveda and Vini Yoga were so intrinsically linked. It was kind of profound on so many levels. And
Yeah.
it's still, I mean, you have just been listening to a recording. I have listened to some recordings. We still listen to
Yeah,
the
the whole
teachings.
4 years is in the can recorded, and we go through them.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. And now, in addition to seeing people one on one and guiding their diet and their lifestyle, etc., and herbs and improving health and all of that, you also teach classes on Ayurveda at the Yoga Well Institute.
What prompted me to teach classes, you know, initially for my own practice, and then we integrated them as part of Yoga Well, was that clients would come to me that had gone to other practitioners and they would have a stack this big of papers, and they'd say, so what do I do? It was completely overwhelming for them to get, don't do this, look through 10 pages of foods they can have and 20 pages of foods they couldn't have. And then in my own clientele, from people who hadn't gone to anybody else, but they were my initial clients, sort of the look on their faces of like, and so how do I do this? That's great. You're making this recommendation. You're making a lifestyle change. You're making a dietary recommendation. And how do I actually implement this in my life? And I realized that having my teaching background, that I would explain to them. But I thought, you know what? I need to explain to everybody because what's happening is people are going online, they're taking a quiz, they're finding out what they think is their constitutional tendency, and they're looking up some diet and starting to eat that way. And then some people are doing really well on that, and some people are causing more imbalances to happen. So I felt this charge or responsibility I want people to know, first of all, we're on a spectrum, we're on a scale, and we're on one side of the scale and we're moving gently to another spot on the scale. But if we go too fast, we will just go flying back to our original location. So, the pendulum will swing and then it will swing right back. So to make change, the way I talk about it is like a train, and we're rerouting the train, and we take the train tracks off the ground and we have to take them up and we have to move them over, and then we have to create a new groove and we have to put them down, and to do that takes time, because if we do it too fast, the new tracks will not take, they won't stay, they'll be wobbly, it might reroute you to the old path. So we have to, in creating the new samskars and creating the new patterns, we have to go slow and steady in a certain direction. And if most people are like me, if I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, I also will have buy-in and I will do it. Oh, I'm doing this recommendation because it's going to help me in this way. Okay, well, then I want to try it and see how I feel. And sometimes we don't even believe that we're feeling better because we're like, well, I'm feeling better. And I did this one really simple thing. And could that really have been it and be helping me? Yes. Right. So I started to see these patterns with my clients, thinking, how do I help them? Okay. I need to teach them about why we're doing what we're doing and then how to integrate it in a digestible way, step by step, so it's not overwhelming. People come to me and I'll be like, you need to make a tea. And there's one person who's like, how do I heat up water? Right? There's some people who are like, I have no idea how to boil water. And then the next person's like, okay, I would like to know how much water, what's the ratio, how many teaspoons of this herb and this, and what's the exact time of day and how many cups per day, right? So we have and then the next person's like, fine, no problem. I'll make a tea once a day, right? So we're all these different versions of these doshas expressed through ourselves, and we're all needing different things. And the recommendation for one person is quite easy, and that same recommendation for the next person is very overwhelming. So how do I break it down in a way that we can all do the recommendation? My clients can do the recommendations in a digestible way. As part of that, I also wanted to do some Ayurvedic cooking. So not just like, these are the principles of Ayurveda. These
Before
are
you get there,
yeah,
before you get there, this as a note for people who don't know, like there is a specific way of making tea. You don't just like throw everything in a pot on the stove and then boil it all. No, you have to boil your water first, and then you take the other things and you steep those things in the already boiled water that's been removed from the heat. And so there is like actually, if you do the cooking process in one way, it has one effect. And if you do the cooking process in another way, it has a
yes,
different effect. And so that these classes that you do, a lot of it are about specifically helping people to know exactly what to do so that they get the right effect.
yes.
Um,
And to add to that, the why. I know I said that already, but I just want to emphasize the why, because if I know that I take a coriander seed tea and it's going to help reduce the heat, and heat is connected to my anger and my skin being red and a rash I have, oh, I'm going to try the tea. I want to try that coriander seed tea that she's mentioning, right? Because if it's just coriander seed tea and I don't really know why, I don't really want to make coriander seed tea. Like, why? Right? But if we know sometimes the why, then it's broken down in this really digestible way and it's given a specific, you know, recommendations and a specific set of instructions, then it's much more doable.
it's much more doable. I
Much
just
more
want to
doable.
also say this one thing that you made me think of when um, I see at yoga exhibitions, conferences, tables where they have as the lead, find your dosha, find your dosha. And it's basically a 1 page or a 2 page, about symptoms. And then they say, you're this, you're kapha, you're vata, and what I've learned from you and your teachers and whatnot is that this is a totally wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
It's not actually measuring what you are, it's measuring what your imbalance is.
Yeah. I mean, there is a very traditional way of thinking where some people, and this is a very small percentage, where people only care. There are some Ayurvedic doctors who only care about your constitution and you just treat the constitution. But in the more prevalent practice of Ayurveda, there is, what is your current state? Where are you right now? And it may be similar to your constitutional tendencies, but it may not be. So this is why I have issue with the online quizzes, is this, if it's just a quiz about your constitution, but maybe your constitution is more earth related, earth and water. But right now in your current state, you have a lot of heat. If I start treating earth and water, it's not going to help my heat. It could aggravate the heat.
Yeah, because a lot of
So
times you need heat to treat earth and water. So you're adding more
yes,
heat to a
yes.
system that's already has excess heat.
So we always want to start with where are you right now? And that is getting more popular, which I hope I've had a hand in. And my teachers have, instilled it in the students that have studied with them, and those students are going out and teaching. But, the prevalence of what is your state right now, your current state, let's start there, treat that, and then bring you back to your true nature, and then keep your true nature balanced. This is really more traditional Ayurveda.
When people start to be able to identify, oh, this symptom that I have, oh, that's this, oh, that's caused by these things, then you got super motivated to actually drop those things.
Yeah. Well, and also, I was just thinking about this today. Some people come to Ayurveda when there's not a lot of suffering. There's not a lot of pain. There's not, maybe a mild imbalance. They just believe in it and they've seen benefits in others, or they want to try it for themselves. But there are a set of people that come to me and come to Ayurvedic practitioners when nobody else has been able to help. And when that happens, there's a real willingness because nothing else has been able to nothing else has been able to help them. So there is that sort of, I'm going to try this because I want to feel better. I don't feel good and I don't want to be suffering, and I want to do this so that I feel better.
The things that you're saying about sustainable change, about sustainable transformation, are also what we're thinking about in yoga. In order to change someone's posture, you can't just do one yoga class. You have to do the same movement repeatedly, daily, over a long period of time. And then the person's posture can change.
Right.
But if we just do it one time, then nothing is there. This idea of sustainable transformation, and that actually it's a practice, it's something that you do regularly, is so aligned with yoga.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot because there are pills for a lot of things. And I go to my primary care physician every year, and I get all my blood panels done, and I get all my markers done, and I love that I can do that. I want people to be able to look at me through that lens and look at my blood and look at my biometrics, and know what's happening from their lens. And I also love that there's another way to look at my system through another set of, you know, perspectives, like another lens, an Ayurvedic lens that's how we're seeing the body, because it's subtle. It's not being seen under a microscope. It's not being looked at through a tube. It's through senses. It's through a pulse. It's through tongue. It's through all these different diagnostic tools, and it's giving different sets of information. So the issue that some people might find is, well, I want to be able to go somewhere and take a pill. And it's lovely to be able to take a pill and something to be better. But what I love about Ayurveda is it's treating the cause. It's giving something to move the system in a trajectory over time so that that causative factor doesn't come and create an imbalance later on in another set of issues. So it is similar in that it is continual, or it can be, and it benefits you more the more continually you practice over time Ayurveda. But it doesn't have to be exhaustive. I feel like that's a lot of what people go, do I have to keep doing this? Or like, I read about this and I really, and I go, well, I could never have imagined cooking fresh food every day because I was a teacher. So I would make something and then I'd eat, I'd make parts of
Make it on the weekend.
I make it in the weekend and then I'd add to it over the week and I would eat that. And I didn't eat super old food, but it wasn't freshly cooked every day. And Ayurveda really believes in fresh food. We cook fresh every single day, and I love it. And now I'm a little snobby about old food, you know?
I know we
I'm
go
a
to
li-
restaurants. We go to restaurants, and you always remark like, "Oh, this is really fresh," or eh.
It was, I could tell they reheated it, you know? And I'm like, no, I want fresh food. But I couldn't imagine in my mind that I would have time or space to be cooking fresh food every day. But if you're moving the spectrum, you know, you're moving on the spectrum in a direction and you're moving the train tracks, over time, what seemed imperceivable, this linking or this continual Ayurvedic practice, like I got to keep doing this over time, you're like, oh, that's now my new routine. And I'm continually linking to Ayurveda in this new way through this new routine. And now that's my new pattern, my new samskara. So it is similar in that it is something where we link to it over time. It creates sustainable change. It shifts slowly. So the new pattern gets moved in a slow, digestible way and then creates a new groove and a new pattern. And basically, it's moving you towards feeling better and more often. You know, I mean, people are like, why should I do Ayurveda? And I'm like, well, do you want to feel good? Like, or do you want to feel pretty crappy? You know, and some people are like, oh, I don't care how I feel. And I'm like, well, maybe that's not for you. And I'm like, I want to feel, you know, it's not that I'm expecting that I'm going to feel fabulous all the time. But, you know, we were traveling recently and I didn't do my yoga practice. And I was like, by the end of the week, like, it's hard to get up off the ground. I'm like, I'm not that old. I started doing my practice the last 2 days and I'm like, I'm already limber again. Nothing is hurting in my body. You know, it's just sort of like, this is the same with Ayurveda. Like I scrape my tongue in the morning. I do my morning practice. I do my morning rituals, my morning routines. I have fresh food that I make, you know, fresh whole foods I'm eating. I added some spices, helps my digestion. So all these things over time, I've changed changed in a direction. I've created a new set of patterns and I'm feeling better more often. Hallelujah. Sign me up. You know, the thing I was going to say to that, I was going to add to that is what, you know, you mentioned very early on that we do share some clients. What I see is when people are doing a Vini yoga practice, specifically, I have nothing bad to say about other yoga practices, but there is something very specific and very special about Vini yoga, not just because I'm married to you, but you are bringing, or, you know, Vini yoga, these practices are bringing prana to areas that Ayurveda also wants to bring prana to. Ayurveda is trying through diet and food to bring energy and vitality and movement to a certain area or certain areas in the body. Half of my job is done when people are also doing Vini yoga. I mean, you could almost say I'd go out of business, but it's not quite there. I think it's a very collaborative, cooperative, supportive to have both because it's very similar in terms of person specific, constitution specific, this individual specific. This is all Ayurveda, you know, not what does everybody need. It's what does Elizabeth need? What does Chase need? Like, what do I need in terms of a practice? And an Ayurvedic set of recommendations is totally different from you. So what I love is this complement between the two because there's a practice of what somebody saw from a yoga therapy perspective, and they're doing a certain set of, you know, breathing, movement, meditation, chanting, whatever it is. And I'm over here from my lens, and it's just a beautiful, I feel like the healing happens faster. And we may not actually need as many Ayurvedic recommendations if they're doing their practice. I mean, that's a research study ready to happen right there.
I tell you, I agree 100% that when the two sciences come together, when Vini Yoga comes together with Ayurveda, that there is a huge synergy, and that the results are much greater than the sum of the two together,
Yeah.
or individually. You know,
In the parts, right?
I think of yoga as being primarily breathing and uh, attention. And that those are the main tools which we're using in yoga. And obviously with asana, we're also using the physical body as well. But so you have breathing and attention and physical movement as really helping to bring the system towards balance. And then with Ayurveda, you have diet and lifestyle, like what time do you go to bed, and do you nap in the afternoon or not, and how much physical exercise, and those kinds of things. And so you have diet and lifestyle, and combined with breathing and attention and movement, and it's just super powerful. And especially since the two are so closely connected in terms of their understanding of how the human system functions and the ways that supporting that functioning can happen. It's really wonderful to watch. I agree. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
I can't wait to come back. I'm so excited.
If people are interested in working with you and saying having a one-on-one series of sessions or whatnot, or taking your class, how do they find you? Where is that information?
So you can go to set up a free 10-minute consultation, have a conversation. I think that's a wonderful first step. I think it's called free10.sukha wellness, SUKHA wellness.com. Free, the number 10.sukha wellness.com. Set up a 10-minute chat, free, get to talk to you about all my different options. And then yogawell.com has lovely offerings. I just taught an Ayurveda for Immunity course, just a short little workshop. I'm in almost towards the fourth module of the Ayurvedic, accessible Ayurveda class. It's a 9-month course, but you can still join if you're interested in learning about Ayurvedic cooking. We're going to do the last module on Ayurvedic cooking.
I want to just say a little bit about that course, which is the accessible Ayurveda course. As far in my mind, is awesome. It helps people to implement Ayurveda in their life, and you go step by step explaining it Ayurveda, and then everybody figures out, well, what is their imbalance, and what can I do for that? And a lot of people are also figuring out the imbalances of their partners and their kids and their students, and what to do for that. And then you even go to so far in the program to teach Ayurvedic cooking so that people can actually implement these ideas easier and whatnot. I think that if somebody is interested in Ayurveda, it's a fantastic way of really going deeper in it and actually understanding it and applying it in one's life. I just think that class is so cool.
Yes, come join us. So fun.
Good. Well, we'll have to have you on another time. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.